The following program is a production of Naleo TV.
As an artist, I'm interested in transforming the material. Because if you transform the material in a certain way, it starts to speak visually. And I'm actually trying to almost fool the viewer because they don't look like books at first when you see them. So there's a power to transforming something from a material level. My name is Jacqueline Rush Lee. I'm a sculptor. So I was born and raised in Northern Ireland. I moved to Hawaii about 30 years ago. My husband's family is from here. His father's from Wahiwa. And growing up in Northern Ireland, I was always very artistic. I was creative, musical. I've always made things. And I used to make my own little books and write stories and poetry in them. So I know where that comes from. So I was an art major in high school there. And then just over time with traveling, I came to Hawaii. And I went to the University of Hawaii to do my degree there. I was in a group show at one point, but this is my first solo exhibition in Hilo.
My name is Andrzej Kramasz. I'm a gallery curator and director at East Hawaii Culture Center. Right now we are at the exhibition of Jacqueline Rush Lee, whorl. We exhibited her two pieces, I think it was about 2016 or 2017. She does this sculpture using books for a long time, but there were totally different sculptures. There were more sculptural, the books were more visible. She said that she was inspired by our program, submitted a proposal, and that's how it happened. From that, we started working on the exhibition.
I'm really drawn to objects, the physicality of objects. Even though I do have a background in painting and drawing, just like most artists. I am also a ceramic artist as well. And in some ways, I actually think that some of the ways that I've created these artworks follow the ceramic process in some degree, because if you're firing something in a kiln, you are depending on chemistry and also the elements within the kiln to transform the work. It came just from my working process, a little bit by, I don't want to say by accident, but it's sort of like, when you're working on work, you work on one project and it leads you to the next. So I had made a large sculpture and I was actually disassembling parts of it. And as I was carrying it up my driveway, I noticed in the side of my eye, sort of a silhouette of an empty tree hollow. And literally my brain just made the connection, oh, that looks just like it would fit in the tree hollow. And literally I put it in there. And that's how, art making can start. It's not always rational. It's just sort of like, oh, let me try this. This looks cool. And then you start to see things happen and then I take it from there. I live in Kahaluu in Oahu, which has its fair share of rain and sunshine, a little bit like the Big Island in some ways. And I put it in my garden. I live in an acre there. So that's how I started off the process. And the process and the concept at first was, oh, I think I'll do this project where I'll call it whorl bombing, and I'll put these on maybe some trails and different parts of the island, and people would just access them and would be cool just to come across them. This is what I would call a slow art process. The very first piece that I made was made in 2014. What happens is a two-part phase. What I do is I put books in trees. I let the weather collaborate with them, the rain, the sun, and termites, and things like that. And over time, sometimes between maybe 1 to as long as 4 years, the books change over time, and I take them out. I stop the process. So they have a site-specific element to them. and then I take them out, and these are what I would call residual objects. I don't interfere with them in any way, but I do inspect them, I observe them over time, and then when I think that they look really cool, there's a certain point where you go, oh wow, okay, I'm taking it out. And then I dry them out, and I actually freeze them for about a month just to kill any bugs. So they're frozen just so that there are no insects in them, and pretty much just left as is. Sometimes I'll strip some things off them if there's like a little bit of detritus, but pretty much what you see is, you really become really aware of the weather and how things decay, and I mean, it's like Jurassic Park where I live. The trees grow like weeds, and you see nature is ravenous and how it takes everything down. And when I first made this work and I brought it out accidentally, the first piece after a year, it made me personally sort of think of our mortality, because you look at something and you see just how it's completely ravished. And that's my sort of interpretation, but other people will have their own interpretation of it. The books in this particular space, they're all different. Some look like wood, some look like rubble, some look like stone, some look like they're becoming part of the tree. And I even have one that looks like fleshy, looks like flesh. And these are things that I initiate this process. I let nature take over, but then I intervene. I take them out when I think they're ready. And then I look at them, and then if they have that power in them, then to me they're ready to show.
Of course, we're trying, as you've seen already, we have different type of exhibitions. We're trying to really touch some different subjects or different type of works. So to me, this work is very calm, and I thought that would be a little bit lighter to have exhibition, especially coming with spring. But what is interesting to me is the circle of life, basically. I like the sculptures that became almost like trunks, and when you really think about books and how much effort humanity put in creating language, then writings, then printing. This is very methodical kind of work and very abstract work. But at the same time, books nowadays are made from wood. So I like this circle of the whole concept of the books. The minute we print them, actually, they are doomed to disappear as objects, but an audience or reader head has timeless existence. So when you think the object itself as a book goes kind of to nature, but still the results of printing the book are existent.
Even though I have a background in traditional materials, I like to transpose a lot of traditional processes and experimental processes onto the work. So I enjoy site-specific work. I have done site-specific work before, but I knew I wanted to work with the architecture of the space to speak to the objects. I wanted to sort of have like a garden sort of feeling, even though we're in a sort of classicist space, it's very formal. I wanted to sort of, for me personally, to use paint and light to create this sort of feeling for the viewer to experience. And Andre did a phenomenal job of actually creating this amazing dappled light in the gallery space that's just incredible. And if you look around, this lighting is stunning. I have not seen anyone execute an exhibition like this. And for him to pick up on the narratives, the layers of narratives that are in my work, I think was very insightful of him to do so. And while I had very specific ideas about my exhibition, his installation of my work is just beyond. I'm completely delighted. He's really brought out a lot of the feeling that's in the work. And for me, the work is quite primal because nature has collaborated with it. So for me to sort of see it in this dappled light and the way he's used the light to play with the pieces, it feels like they were, it sort of combines them being outside underneath trees in dappled light, but also sitting in my studio. When you're with your artwork for a very long time, you see it from a certain perspective all the time. And so just to see it finally up and in his very innovative way of putting it together, I just think it looks incredible. I'm so delighted. And I really think that a lot of people will enjoy looking at the show.
To me, as a curator, the exhibition is always cohesive piece. And each exhibition I try to design different way because each exhibition have different message, sort of. So to me, it's really important to build the relationship with artists and kind of know what the artist think about the work, why they do the work. And then when you know that, my job is kind of to share this feeling or also my experience with the artist and art, share and translate to language in the gallery. In this case, I really wanted to have the feeling of being like in garden or in the forest, when the lighting are just heating up and actually it's very hard to see some of the pieces because it's not about, again, displaying the art piece. It's what it brings with it, right? So I wanted to have the basically like wandering in the open space and have this very peaceful feeling. And so yeah, I have different logs because it's kind of when you wander in the forest, there's like one rock, one trunk is on the ground, another stands, and so of course you don't want to imitate. It would be impossible, first of all, but you don't want to imitate exactly. But the suggestion that kind of you initiate in the gallery, and people, when they come, it's like, oh yeah, that's it. So when they get that feeling, this is the most important.
Because a lot of the book sculptures are hand-sized, they're books, so they relate to the human body and they relate to the hand, and they're small. So I thought, okay, how could I bring this work to this space, because it's quite a large space. So I made a model of the gallery so that I could site the work inside it. And then when you start to do that, you immerse yourself into the space in such a way, you start to see things. Like, I immediately envisioned a waterfall coming down the space. There was no reason other than, wow, a waterfall just relates. I didn't quite understand why at the time. And as soon as I looked at this wall, I thought, gold, foiling. And in some aspects, it relates to gold foil in books. This arch form reminds me of devotional books that I have in my collection, because I do have collections of books because I do love them. And also because the weather transforms, the water element is important. And all of these things, by addressing the architecture, as well as the relationship of the objects to the space, create an immersive feeling in which you navigate the space and you start to sort of see maybe some connections between the objects in the space and to the architecture. So I'm creating an evocative, experiential setting here for people to navigate.
working with Jack, she's very meticulous. She's really hard-working artist, and especially those two pieces. So when we have this moss behind me, when we have the moss on the floor, she work on that at home. But also, yes, I could install, but but she brought this on pieces of foam core under, but it has to be refilled, and that's her work. That's a creative process. It's kind of like, yeah, I could design with but there's not even particular moss, so it's feeling of the artist, how she's gonna fill up that whole construction, right?
I have a site-specific piece here, which is called Moss Code. It's based on a Fibonacci sequence, which is sort of, in short, a pattern in nature that you see from tiny cells through plants, through tree branches. That's why you're seeing some of these in the gallery, all the way through to like storms, hurricanes, galaxy. So it's sort of like microcosmical, sort of, from like the thumbprint, the human thumbprint in the books, all the way through to the sort of larger cosmos idea. It refers to the nature's code, like math that is in nature, and the sort of spiraling effect that happens for basically economical reasons in a lot of plants, because it helps sunlight and rain. It's just the most economical efficient is the word I'm looking for, the most efficient way for a plant to grow. So because the original works looked like thumbprints, so it was based on us humans, and our culture is in the books, I wanted to do something on a larger perspective. So this has a Fibonacci sequence pattern, and you'll see the spiral goes two different ways. It's made out of moss, preserved moss. And the reason why it relates to the books in the space is because a lot of the books had moss on them because they grew out, they changed in very damp environments. So I wanted to relate the moss to the books. It has a substrate, sort of like a foam board underneath. You'll see sort of similar kinds of installations like that in architectural spaces sometimes. Sort of fancy architectural spaces here. The only difference is they tend to be very loose and organic. Mine has a very specific pattern, so it's put together like a mosaic with the preserved moss and foam. And so, I sculpt it a little bit to change the shape, and then I put it together. And I wanted it sort of very lumpy because it reminds me actually of a lot of moss that grows in Ireland. And then it also kind of looks a little bit like a fairy ring. There's an aspect to it that I really like. And the gold foil relates also to, gold foil in books. But also the arch. There's something very sort of spiritual about the arch. Coming from Northern Ireland, obviously we have these in a lot of our cathedrals and churches, but also relating to gold leafing that I have found in Japanese shrines, temples. I've been to Kyoto and experienced the gold leafing, and it's just really beautiful, and it brings a very interesting element into the space. That was quite challenging because you have to take these very fragile leaves and bring them up, and you can't have wind or anything, any open doors, and place them on the sizing, so that was quite difficult to do.
In this case, it's so beautiful because it refers to design of books. It refers to ancient architecture or old architecture, and so she had to do it because it's her piece. Even it's installed on the wall. Yeah, I wish actually I could leave it because for the first time I like this wall.
As an artist, I'm interested in transforming the material. Because if you transform the material in a certain way, it starts to speak visually and on a sensory level. Because I'm taking books, right, which are paper and text and spine, and I'm actually trying to almost fool the viewer because they don't look like books at first when you see them. So there's a power to transforming something from a material level. And that sort of sensory experience that you have relates to your body and how you view the work and perceive it in a very different way. So I'm sort of asking the viewer to look at an object and almost project their own story or narrative onto it.
So Jacqueline had these images of the installation. We believe that it's important. Actually, even having guests just a few minutes ago, they even knowing the exhibition is about books, they are so well done that it's hard to see their books. So we wanted to have the images of the installation on site, how she makes them, how she collaborates with nature to create the piece. So initially we wanted to have, as we have a couple of wallpapers, but there were all the images that supposed to be displayed. And I didn't think that was the best idea to just, show picture of not even artwork. It's a process of creating. So since Jacqueline works with books all the time, and I said, why we don't do book with using those images. That was the idea of the accordion book. So you open, you have a display, beautiful display, but also she found this amazing copper that really also decayed. Again, book is, when you think about the book, is kind of like, it's in the book as an object is past, right? It's done. Everything what happens before is the action. So this book kind of documents, again, the past, what was happening with the objects that we have here.
You get around and see the details of the copper covers, what I call a live patina, in that I didn't use a sealant. So the covers, like the books, will gradually change over time as well. So it's what I would call a living patina. And the photographs are of photos, documentary photos of site-specific sculptures, and you'll see examples of the books as I put them into the trees, and then on the adjacent side you'll see the book as it was changing over time. So the reason why I chose the copper covers is because copper is very transformative, and so it really echoes a lot of the themes in the exhibition with the books having changed over time. And here you can see the moss reference, and which is why I have the moss installation, so this sort of relates to the installation over there. Here you can start to see all the strange little bits of fungi, and a bunch of strange stuff happens on the surface of the books. Some of them are screwed together, some of them are not, because I learned from the first one, the more dense they are, it seems the more the insects likes to really get in there. I also like that when I take them out, and some of them that have been screwed together, I like to unscrew them. I like that feeling of it being sort of almost like investigated, like archaeologically, sort of. And then I echoed the copper covers in the inside of the book here as well, just to finish it.
To me, this is always one experience. You have to have an experience come to the exhibition. So yeah, of course, I might prefer this piece over this piece, but that's not the point. It's kind of like if you deconstruct the sentence and you take a comma out of the sentence, means nothing. But if you don't have a comma in the sentence, well, you're kind of lost in the sentence, right? So the same I kind of feel when I design the exhibition, that of course there have to be pieces that speak for itself, but each of them support each other. And just one example, like this bird, it's the video of that bird, just so pristine, so beautiful. And when I I was initially thinking on the wall, and it bothered me because you look on TV, like on a program on TV, but that's not. And when it's the TV on the floor, you look it down, and it's so, yeah, that's the feeling actually. And yeah, the bird, yeah, we've seen that, but also the sound of chirping birds from the side of the video makes this experience totally different. I would say we're kind of lucky because like people come to our exhibition, they really appreciate those exhibitions. But in this, most of the time, on Saturday, I was sitting, we were open, and after the Merry Monarch parade, people were coming with whole family, and they opened the curtain, and it's like, wow. Like it's actually expression of, before knowing anything about this exhibition, they were just really impressed with the feeling in the gallery.
Well, first of all, I'd love to thank the East Hawaii Cultural Center and the board for allowing me to exhibit in this beautiful space. Andre Kramars, I cannot say enough for anyone out there who is fortunate to be able to have a show in this space. You get to deal with Andre, and he's amazing to work with. I would like to thank my husband, obviously, who is a great supporter of my work. And I would also like to thank Gay Chan, who works at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, who allowed me to set up a site-specific installation at the university there, from which some of these works are here present in the gallery. I think this is an exhibit that everyone can get something out of. I think a lot of families would maybe enjoy coming here. It doesn't really matter who. There's something I think that everyone can connect to. Because most of the works are books, I think everyone can relate to a book. And I actually use the book as a signifier for the viewer to enter into. Much like how you would read a book and you imagine a world of the text, this is doing the same thing, but the viewer is just entering into it in a different way. And because I have sort of conceptualized it as like navigating the space through a garden, I have titled some works sort of almost like a title to a novel, just to sort of initiate or imply a narrative and then let everyone else sort of complete it themselves. I mean, I would just say that it's an immersive exhibition that deals with just a very sensory, experiential way of seeing art. It's not about me sort of telling you what the work means. I'm going to hint at certain things, but it's really for the viewer to find something themselves, whichever path they navigate and whatever it is that they bring to each object.